Imagine Horror Network, the official horror stories channel.
Forest hunters. Jonathan had had a long day at work and he was ready to go home and get some rest. He drove the long stretch of road home, lost in his thoughts, when he finally made it to the house. He was almost too tired to make it inside, but he dragged himself up the stairs and into his bedroom. He wearily stumbled around, collecting his clothing and throwing it into a pile on the floor before taking off his work clothes and getting ready for bed. As he sank into his bed, he closed his eyes and was soon fast asleep. When Jonathan awoke, he could not believe his eyes. He was not in his own room, but instead in the middle of a forest. He glanced around, taking in the unfamiliar sights, wondering how he had gotten there. He thought back to the night before, but all he could remember was getting into bed. He slowly got to his feet and tried to find his way out of the woods. As he ventured farther into the forest, he suddenly heard voices coming from nearby. As he crept closer, he realized the voices belonged to two hunters. They had dogs and were searching for something in the woods, and they were not alone. As the men spoke, he heard them mention a large cash prize for anyone who could bring them the person they were searching for. Suddenly, Jonathan realized he was their target. In an instant, Jonathan knew he had to get away from them as fast as possible. He took off running, not knowing where he was going, but just running away from the hunters. He ran until his legs felt like lead and he was exhausted, but he kept going, determined to escape the hunters. Eventually, he stumbled out onto a road and found a car parked on the side of the road. He jumped into the car and drove away, not knowing where he was going but just wanting to get away. For hours, Jonathan drove, not knowing where to go or who he could trust. Eventually, he stumbled upon a small town that was off the beaten path. He noticed a small diner and decided to stop there, hoping to find some sort of refuge. He walked into the diner and was greeted by a friendly face, the owner of the diner. He explained the situation to the owner and asked if he could stay the night in the diner. The owner agreed, and Jonathan gratefully accepted the offer. That night, Jonathan was joined by a strange man in the diner. The man was wearing a muddy overcoat and had a dark, mysterious air to him. He said his name was Robert, and he had also been running from the hunters. Robert told Jonathan about the hunters and their plan to find and kill the person for a large cash reward. Jonathan was determined to find out more, and the next day Robert helped him search the nearby area for any clues that the hunters may have left behind. Eventually, they stumbled upon a cabin deep in the forest. Jonathan approached it cautiously, but found it to be empty inside. As they searched through the cabin, they found a large amount of cash hidden in a drawer. They figured out that this was the money the hunters were offering for Jonathan's capture. Suddenly, they heard a noise outside. When they looked out the window, they saw the two hunters had returned with a small group of men. Robert and Jonathan knew they had to get away, but the hunters spotted them and the chase was on. The two men frantically ran from the hunters, diving through the forest and eventually making it to a clearing. But before they could get any farther, the hunters had surrounded them with guns. Just then, a loud boom suddenly echoed through the forest. The hunters had been tricked by Robert, who had set off a bomb of some kind in the forest so that it sounded like a gunshot. The hunters ran away in a panic, and Robert and Jonathan were free. The two men quickly made their escape, disappearing into the night. They were relieved to have escaped and were determined to never put themselves in such a dangerous situation again. Jonathan never forgot his harrowing experience that night. He was forever grateful to Robert for saving his life and was reminded daily of the importance of trusting his gut.